A lot of people start their day with a cup of coffee. This helps them wake up and feel more alert as they start the day. A lot of people will also drink coffee throughout the day or feel less groggy or stay more focused on their work that they have to get done. Some people may also drink caffeinated drinks late into the evening if they have to, say, finish an assignment that's due late at night and they have to stay awake for that. But why does caffeine keep us awake? What about it chemically, specifically, makes us more alert and focused throughout the day? Well, in this presentation, we'll explain how caffeine is an example of chemistry in real life and how it keeps you from falling asleep and also has other side effects that we'll talk about. Now, in order to answer the question of how caffeine keeps you awake, first I have to ask the question, what makes you sleepy? Now, in your brain cells, there are proteins called adenosine receptors. Adenosine is a molecule produced from the metabolism of ATP, which I'll explain more about that later. But basically, it's an energy storing molecule that's in your cell and produces energy for your cells throughout the day. Now, when adenosine is produced, it means that you've burned through a lot of energy and it's time for your body to go to sleep, basically. Now, when adenosine is in your cell and it binds to adenosine receptors, that produces a biological response that increases your feeling of sleepiness. As you can see in the picture, you can see the ATP going from the inner membrane of the cell to the outer membrane. And there it's able to convert itself into ADP, and then AMP, and then finally adenosine, which is that yellow molecule in the picture. And there it's able to bind to the adenosine receptor, which is that green protein. Now, how is adenosine produced? As I said before, ATP is an energy storing molecule in your cells. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate, which is the picture in the top left of this slide. You can see it's called adenosine triphosphate because there's 3 phosphate groups, which is where the triphosphate comes from. And the other molecule is called adenosine. Now, it gets converted into ADP, which is adenosine diphosphate. When the bond between 2 of the phosphates gets broken, this releases energy for the cell to power the metabolic functions of the cell and produce ADP. Now, ADP can go through a similar process and convert itself into AMP, which is adenosine monophosphate. As you can see in this picture, it can be intracellular or extracellular, but eventually it converts itself into adenosine. Now, adenosine is a good signal for your cell to tell you when too much energy has been produced, because ATP is your energy storing molecule. If there's a lot of adenosine, it means a lot of ATP has been used and it needs to make more ATP. So that's why adenosine is produced as a signal to tell your body when it's time to go to sleep.
In order to understand how caffeine works, we need to understand what happens on a biochemical level. Caffeine and adenosine are similar compounds in that they are both purines. This means that they could potentially bind to similar receptors. Additionally, adenosine is an agonist, which means that it will create a biological response once it makes a change within our bodies. That means binding to a receptor. On the other hand, caffeine is an antagonist, meaning that it will provide no biological response if bound to a receptor. This biological response, in our case, being tiredness. Now, what happens once caffeine enters our body is that it binds to these receptors that adenosine would typically bind, preventing it from creating that response in our body. This stimulation, because our bodies are not able to understand the biological response from getting tired because of adenosine not being able to bind due to the presence of caffeine, we see an increase in brain activity, which means that caffeine is a stimulant. Other stimulants in the world are nicotine, cocaine, and amphetamines. Side effects to prolonged use of caffeine could include dizziness, headaches, anxiety, sleepiness, and dehydration.
The next topic I want to talk about is, why does caffeine cause dehydration? You know what? Caffeine is diuretic, meaning it causes the kidneys to produce more urine. In coffee and tea, there's enough water to offset the dehydrating effect. However, dehydration is a major side effect of caffeine pills. You guys know that when you consume caffeine, it stimulates the production of a hormone called vasopressin, which normally signals the kidneys to reabsorb water into the body. However, when caffeine is present, vasopressin production is suppressed, and the kidneys release more water in the form of urine. This increase in urine production can lead to dehydration if you don't drink enough fluids to compensate the extra water loss. Dehydration can cause a variety of symptoms, including dry mouth, thirst, fatigue, headache, or dizziness. So it's so important to note that not everyone is equally sensitive to caffeine diuretic effects, and the amount of caffeine required to cause dehydration can vary depending on the individual's body weight, hydration status, and tolerance to caffeine. However, if you are concerned about dehydration, is it a good idea to drink plenty of water or other hydrating fluids throughout the day, especially if you are consuming caffeine? The next one I want to talk about is why does caffeine cause anxiety? It doesn't guide, but it mimics the sensations related to anxiety. Since caffeine is a stimulant, it can increase heart rate, breathing rate, and body temperature. This causes what feels like anxiety and likelihood of symptom increase after 400 milligrams of caffeine, so it's really good to limit caffeine. One reason why caffeine can cause anxiety is that it stimulates the production of adrenaline, a hormone that prepares the body up for a fight or flight response. Adrenaline increases a heart rate, blood pressure, and breathing rate, which can create feelings of anxiety or panic in some people. Another factor is that caffeine can interfere with the production of the neurotransmitter GABA, which helps to regulate anxiety and stress. By blocking the action of GABA, caffeine can make it harder for the brain to regulate anxiety and may contribute to feelings of restlessness. Overall, if you experience anxiety or other negative effects from caffeine consumption, it may be a good idea to reduce your caffeine intake or avoid it altogether.
So you might ask yourself, how long does caffeine last? Caffeine has a half-life of 4 to 6 hours. So if you consume a cup of coffee with 100 milligrams of caffeine at 3 p.m. as a pick-me-up to get you through the rest of your day, you will still have about 50 milligrams of caffeine in your system at 9 p.m. when you're trying to go to bed. Now let's move on to caffeine tolerance. Continual consumption of caffeine actually leads to more adenosine receptors being produced. There has been limited human testing, however, this is still the leading theory based on animal tests. More adenosine receptors allows for more areas that adenosine can bind to, while caffeine is antagonizing other receptors. So how do we counteract caffeine tolerance? One way is to try consuming less or no caffeine at all for an extended period of time to help reset your body's tolerance to caffeine. Be aware that you may experience withdrawal side effects, such as nausea, headaches, sleepiness, irritability, negative mood, brain fog, or fatigue. These symptoms can typically last between 2 and 7 days.